Hi everyone. I wanted to start this video by just kind of taking a minute to reflect on where we are in the course, what stuff has been due, where we're going next. So I'm recording on Tuesday the 26th, and hopefully we have now handed in our narrative essay, which was due on Monday the 25th. Um, I hope that we've handed them in, but I know from the numbers that I saw that I think I got something like around 6 or 8 of them submitted out of the 22 people in the class. That's okay. I'm not mad or anything. I'm just a little concerned, a little worried. With this being the late start course, we really don't have a lot of time. Of course, I'm still, let me say first, of course, I'm still accepting late work. I accept all late work, whether it's homework or essays or the small writing assignments like the descriptive assignment or any of that. I accept all of it late. I might take some points off for lateness, but it's still so much better than getting a 0. So you still have time to handle all this stuff in. Let me make that very clear. But this course does move fast because it's a late start course. We don't have our usual 15 or 16 weeks here. We only have, what is it, like 10 weeks or something like that. So, as we're finishing up our narrative essay, handing that in, we do now need to look forward towards the next essay. And I know if you're still kind of stuck with the narrative essay, that can be overwhelming, and you might get really worried. So I would say please reach out to me if you're confused about the narrative essay. Send me an email. We can set up a meeting as well. We can do a WebEx, I think is the meeting thing that Bergen uses. But we can set up a meeting. We'll find the time that works, and we can talk for 20 or 30 minutes, and I'll try to explain these things more clearly. I know it can be easy to tune out when you're just watching these videos, or maybe the way that I'm explaining stuff doesn't make sense. So please reach out to me if you're confused or if you don't understand what I'm asking you to do with that stuff. Because again, we don't have a huge amount of time here. You can still make this stuff up. I'm accepting late work. You can still do it. I believe in you guys. I think you can do it. But again, it moves fast, this class. So please reach out to me if you're having problems with that. But I would really like to see some more submissions for this stuff going forward. So anyway, that's the narrative essay. We finished that. So I do just kind of want to introduce the kind of essay that we're going to be writing next. We just did a narrative essay. We had our whole topic about language. We read about it a lot. We wrote about it. This next essay, it's going to be a different type of essay. This one is called a literary analysis essay. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to read a short story, which I actually posted for homework, I think, for this week for you to read it by next Monday. It's called Independence Day, parentheses, News from Home, by Seppiata. It's a short story. It was written in 2003. It's like around 15 pages long, maybe it's 17 pages long. So it's a little bit long. So I would definitely maybe give yourself multiple sittings to read it through. If 15 pages sounds super long to you, then maybe give yourself a chance to space it out. Maybe start reading it this week, finish it up over the weekend, or something like that, because it is a little bit long. But we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about the story and the characters and everything. What I want to talk about here is just what a literary analysis essay is. And the first thing is that it's obviously writing about a piece of art. If you've ever written an essay about a play or a poem or a novel or anything like that, a movie, then you've done literary analysis. Like a lot of things when it comes to English class, like a lot of things I've said this semester, I think that this gets taught very poorly. I think that, you might have read some Shakespeare play and written an essay about it, but like, I don't know, what were you really trying to do in that essay? What was the point of writing that essay? I don't know. I don't feel like we have a good sense of that kind of stuff in high school and even at the beginning of college. I don't think I had a good sense of it, definitely until I got into college and, had professors kind of show me like a different way of doing it. So I want to talk just a little bit about what literary analysis is and what it's not. So my definition, I guess, for literary analysis essay would be that it's an essay that makes an argument about a message a piece of art is sending. In our case, we're reading a short story, so we're going to be making our essay will make an argument about a message that the story is sending. I know that's confusing. I think it'll make more sense once we go through this. So the assignments that I gave you for this week, that are due, I think, on Wednesday this week, the essay about Pokemon, watching the SpongeBob episode, and the questions I gave you about the SpongeBob episode, both of those things are designed to help us answer this question: what is literary analysis? That Pokemon essay, I'm going to do a whole video on it coming up, but that Pokemon essay is a literary analysis essay. It makes an argument about a message that's being sent by the show Pokemon, right? So that's what a literary analysis essay does. Some things that it's not. A literary analysis essay is not like fan theories. I feel like that's something that you see a lot on the internet or like YouTube videos or whatever. Like I remember seeing one about the show Rugrats where it was like, oh, the show Rugrats, like they're all actually dead, and like Tommy was a stillborn, and like Phil and Lil were like they like killed each other in the womb or something, and it was like, oh, they're all actually, in heaven or in purgatory or something like that. Those, I would call that a fan theory. I wouldn't call that serious literary analysis. I feel like those things can be fun and interesting to talk about for a while, um, but that's not making, an argument about the message that it's sending. So I don't think that counts. I also think that Easter eggs do not count. I feel like that's another big thing if you watch videos or stuff on the internet about art, is being like, oh, actually, like this like object in the back of the scene, that's from the last movie. Like you see this a lot with like comic book movies and stuff, of like, oh, well, this character, that's actually this person from the. That's not literary analysis either. That's just kind of, I don't know, adding to the lore or something like that. It's not making an argument about a message that it's sending. Another thing that I think is not literary analysis is, the other another big way that we see art talked about, especially on the internet, is in terms of like what should be canceled or what people should or shouldn't watch. Like if there's a movie with like some kind of sexual violence or something, like, oh, that should be canceled. Like it shouldn't be on Netflix or whatever. They have to get rid of it. Or if there's a movie with like something racist in it, like that can't be on HBO Max. Um, I also don't take those arguments all that seriously. I think that we can say that a piece of art has a bad message without saying that it needs to be canceled, Like there's a lot of movies that I think have like bad politics, or maybe even they send bad messages, but they can still be good movies. Like for instance, pick basically any action movie from the 80s where they were like largely like anti-communist propaganda about like patriotism and how great America is, and like those things probably have bad politics and messages that are very like militaristic and like nationalist and stuff like that. But some of those just rock. Like some of them are still just really good movies with like cool explosions and fight scenes and stuff. So I don't think canceling stuff really counts as literary analysis either. So again, the way we'd want to think about it, it's making an argument about a message the text is sending, and that's the kind of essay that we're going to be doing. I want to also talk here just about like a couple of things that I think might have been problems with the way that art has been taught in school before. Reading novels, plays, whatever it is. I just wanted to talk about like some of the things that we might have hated about this in the past, some of the problems we might have run into here. I think a big one that I think has maybe happened to us a lot in school, especially with like novels, is teachers kind of insisting on like these symbols, or like really focusing on the symbols in the text, like like I remember, if you guys have read The Great Gatsby, like the green light at the end of Great Gatsby. I remember, having all these classes. What does it mean? What does it really mean? Oh, it's his love or whatever. It's his thinking about the past. Whatever it is, it's like, I don't know. I don't really care that much. And like maybe it represents something, but like I don't know. I feel like the explanations for symbols sometimes we just go way overboard, especially high school teachers. I think especially, also probably some college teachers. Like it's the thing where it's like, oh, this guy was wearing a green shirt, like that's what it says in the story, and then your teacher will go, oh, and we all know that green is the color of jealousy, so clearly that's what they're telling us about this character, and you're like, I don't know, maybe you're just wearing a green shirt, or like it tells you, the character lived in a yellow house, and what we all know, yellow is the color of gold, so that means they're greedy or rich or something. Again, like, but my response to a lot of that stuff is like, well, if you want, if you want it to mean that, I guess it can. It's very important to me that when we, because like there are symbols in art, like that's one of the things that stories do. But it's very important to me that when we say something is a symbol, we have evidence in the text. You know, I don't like this thing of bringing out all of this like outside stuff and being like, oh, that's how we know what it's a symbol for. It's very annoying to me, very frustrating to me. Like I remember, for example, when I read Hamlet in high school, there's this scene when Ophelia comes in with like all these different types of flowers, you know, and I had an assignment where you had to like look up what each type of flower is supposed to mean. And it's like, oh, lilac, like that means memory. And like rose, like, oh, that one's love, of course. And like chrysanthemum, that's like imagination. It's like, I don't know. I just don't really care about that stuff, you know. I call that kind of stuff symbol hunting. You know, when you're going through and just looking for symbols and kind of like forcing them on the text, imposing symbols onto the text, rather than letting them occur in the text naturally and like finding the evidence for them, like that. You know, like for instance, I think in Of Mice and Men, like the whole thing about the farm, like them having their own farm and George petting the rabbits and whatever. Like yeah, that kind of does feel like a symbol for like the American dream or something, or like making it in America, working your way up or something like that. Like I think that is a symbol. I think there's a lot of stuff in that text that kind of make it that way. So I think it's all about the evidence that's in the text. I think another problem that we've had with readings for school, maybe I should have started with this one, but a lot of the readings, I think that you guys would probably consider them bad, you know, or unrelatable or boring or uninteresting. And part of this is because they make us read all this old stuff, right? They make us read all the Shakespeare stuff. And I'll stand by some of the Shakespeare plays. I like Hamlet. I like Macbeth. I like Othello. But I can understand why any, you know, 15-year-old would not want to read something that's written in that language, or why they would have trouble understanding the language that's used in Shakespeare and stuff like that. So I get that. A lot of other stuff, like if you've read stuff, you know, from the 1800s and things, it's just very unrelatable. It's just not the kind of problems that we have in our lives. You know, it's like I remember just reading all this stuff about people struggling with like religion, or like the Scarlet Letter or something, where they're living in like this Puritan, or like the Crucible, like about like the Puritans and stuff. And it's like that's interesting as far as it goes. You know, like I can get into it kind of because I like history, but again, I understand why you'd look at that and say, well, that's not like my life at all. This is I can't really sympathize with any of these characters or the problems that they have. It's unrelatable to us, you know. So I get that. Another thing that I think might have been a problem in the past is, especially in high school. I don't know. I guess also in college. Maybe I should stop just picking on high school. But I think there's a lot of teachers when they're teaching a novel or a movie or some kind of art, they just always think that they're right. You know, they think that they have the one right interpretation. And if you ask a question, or if you're like, oh, I don't know about that, maybe it's different, they're like, nope, nope, that's what it says. This is what it means. That's obviously very silly. For me, art always has multiple meanings. You know, there's not just one correct answer. It's not a math equation. It's 2 + 2 = 4. You know, 4 is the answer, and that's it. I just don't think that art is like that. Whether it's movies, novels, short stories, like we were going to read, I think there's always multiple interpretations that we could have. But that's not to say that it's all subjective, because that's something the students like to say. Oh, well, it's all subjective. You know, well, how do we know? Like, what if I say it means this and you say it means that? Evidence. There has to be evidence in the text. Just because there's not like one right answer that's the only right answer doesn't mean that any answer is fine. It means that you need to back it up. You need to have evidence, and whichever answer is the most convincing is the one that wins the day. You know, is the one, like, are you going to be able to convince your reader with the evidence that you have from the text itself? You know, quotes from the story, things that happen, stuff about the characters. Can you back up your interpretation with stuff actually in the story? That's what it comes down to for me. And even then, like the Pokemon essay that we're going to read, for instance, you might read that and say, well, I disagree with this. And that's fine, you know. That doesn't mean that it's a failure as an essay. It means that it presents its evidence, and if you think you have more convincing evidence to go against them, then that's fine too. That's what literary analysis is about. It's all making arguments about the interpretation of these pieces of art, you know, and kind of and we can always argue about them. There's never one definitive answer, so the teacher can't always be right. Kind of similar to this, another thing I don't like is when we focus too much on the author's intention. You know, it's kind of an open question how much we should care about the author's intention, and I understand why people want to look at that sometimes. But I think if we focus too much on what the author was trying to do, we do a similar thing of letting the author just decide what it means. You know, instead of looking at what's actually in the story, what's actually in the movie, and making our own determination, which is what I think is the better. like I remember when I read To Kill a Mockingbird in high school, we had to write an essay about it, where the entire essay was just connecting the author Harper Lee, connecting her personal life to what happens in the story, and it's like, oh, like her father was a lawyer, and she grew up in the South, and she knew these people. She had like a weird neighbor or whatever, and it's like, who cares? Like who cares if the story's the same as the author's life? Like, why should I care? I don't. I just don't really care if it's if it's based on Harper Lee's life. Like, okay, cool, whatever. That's not really interesting to me. Another kind of example that I don't like with this, um, I think it's related to Harry Potter. I don't know if you guys have seen or read the Harry Potter stuff, but J.K. Rowling's got her own problems. We need to get into all that. But I remember this really made me mad. After all the books had come out, the Harry Potter books, I read them all. I saw the movies. I was into it, and after the last book had been out for like a few years, even, I think J.K. Rowling came out and she tried to say, she was like, "Oh, Dumbledore, he was gay the whole time." And it's like, okay, like that's fine. I don't care if Dumbledore's gay. That'd be fine for me. It's not in the book anywhere though. And then she wrote these other books later, and they show his childhood and like that he had he was gay or whatever. And it's like that's fine. It's not in the book. You can't just come out and say that. Well, I'm the author, so this is how it was. I created the character, so I'm telling you that he was gay. It's like, well, put it in the story. Put something in the text that says that. And she also tried to do the same thing with I think she tried to say Hermione was supposed to be like Latino or something like that. That Hermione was not supposed to be white. It's like, well, put it in the book. You never said anything like that in the book. In fact, I remember talking about this in a class I took, and there were students being like, "No, look, she describes Hermione as being pale and white and stuff." But the author tried to come out and say, I created these characters, and this is what they're like. I just don't like that stuff. I think our focus needs to be on the text, whether it's the story, the show, the movie, the novel, whatever it is. I think that is the place. I don't like going outside of that too much. Like I don't like going what the author wanted it to be. I feel like authors sometimes think that they're doing one thing and then they do a different thing. So I don't like relying on the author too much in that kind of way. Another thing that could be a problem here is like having bad assignments about the art that you've read in school. Like, well, first of all, I think the essays that you've probably had to write before, like, what was the point of those essays? If you had to read Hamlet and write an essay about it, what was the point of that essay? Why did you write it? Why does anyone write these essays? We're going to talk more about this stuff, but I think we've just never had a good understanding of what the purpose of these assignments were. And also, I remember having just some really stupid assignments. Like I talked about the one with the flowers with Hamlet or whatever. That was a stupid assignment. I remember having another one for this book, Night by Elie Wiesel. Maybe you guys have read this. It's Elie Wiesel lived through the Holocaust. He was like in concentration camps. He made it out. He wrote a book about it later, and it's a great book. It's deep stuff. It's hard to read sometimes, but very emotional, very serious. And I remember one of the assignments that my teacher gave us for this in high school was that like I think part of the book was that the character in the book was like writing letters to someone like that was supposed to be what we were reading were like letters that he was writing that he couldn't really send them to anyone, but he was like like it just helped him to like have someone he was writing to or whatever. So the assignment that they gave us was for us to pretend that we were the kid in the concentration camp and like write a letter to someone on the outside. And it's like, how am I supposed to like whatever? Like obviously I sympathize with the character. Obviously I feel for them. But the idea that I would like know what it's like to be in a concentration camp like this guy was, like that just I don't know. It just seems weird. It seems yucky. It seems a little distasteful. So bad assignments. I think there's a lot of bad assignments when it comes to things that we read for school before. So over the next couple of videos and throughout this week, the Pokemon essay, the SpongeBob video, I'm hoping that we can get a good sense of what literary analysis is. And then next week, I'm going to try to explain a little bit about like why I think it's worth doing and why people do it, why anyone makes a living doing this kind of stuff. But yeah, right now I'll just end by saying again, I'm going to keep repeating this, that literary analysis essay, we're going to be making an argument about a message that the text sends. So again, for our essay, we're going to be writing about that story Independence Day by Seppi Atta. Make sure that you read that closely. I would encourage you guys to print it out if you're able to, just so you can like underline and like find quotes that you want to go back to. But that's the story that we're going to be writing about. So make sure that you read the whole thing. Make sure you read it carefully. And next week, I'm going to be posting a lot of videos about that story. All right, so that's our next essay, literary analysis. Talk about it more soon. See you.